Hello, my friends, and welcome to Perfect Practice. Today, as always, we have another great interview and episode for you. Today, I'm speaking with somebody who I've gotten to know incrementally, but I feel like every interaction I've had, we've had like logarithmic growth in our relationship and our friendship. So today with me, I have Dr. Martin Hart, and I'll read bits of his bio just so you understand who he is. He is a distinguished, world-renowned natural healthcare provider, renowned for his expertise and commitment to patient well-being, and very highly trained, as you'll learn today. He has specialties in kinesiology, homeopathy, functional medicine, and biological medicine. So you can see already why him and I would hit it off. And he has a special interest in what I would consider complex conditions and what many of you might consider complex conditions, but some of you might consider challenging and fun cases to work with. So he works with patients who struggle with Lyme. We were talking about PANS and PANDA cases that he's seeing lots and lots of. Mold is something that he also does a lot of work with. So you're really in for a treat. I want to have this conversation kind of span all areas of business, personal, and clinical growth. And I really honestly can't think of a better person to speak to right now than you. So Martin, thank you. Thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate the time that we spent together, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So welcome to our
Thank you.
conversation.
Yeah, really stoked to dive in.
Amazing. So let's start just by giving people in maybe 2 to 3 minutes a little bit of your background and what got you into natural healthcare.
For sure. So growing up as a kid, I had pandas, hence why I do enjoy working with it, which is a neuropsychiatric condition, a lot of times caused by infections or mold. So I had mold growth, chronic strep as a kid, mycoplasma infection. So I had obsessive compulsive disorder, sleepwalking, night terrors, didn't really sleep until I was in my 20s, that whole mess, right? And so trying to figure that out. And Western doctors weren't really a help. My parents just did the best they could. And then in high school, getting into sports, my dad started helping me get into sports nutrition, right? So, hey, I feel better when I take vitamins, right? I feel better when I exercise. And so I thought I wanted to do some sports medicine, and God had a totally different path for me as I got into my undergrad work in athletic training, exercise science, and then went to chiropractic school. And I totally pivoted, went down the kinesiology route. That led me to Chinese medicine and then functional medicine. And so when I got into practice, the traditional cases were a little boring for me. I definitely didn't
Mm.
want to do manual care. That's the right path for some folks, but for me, I just couldn't do that. And so where I was led pretty quickly was the most difficult cases. And growing up with OCD, I had a bit of perfectionism, right? And so I didn't want to do the easy cases. I want to do the hardest cases to try to prove myself to achieve, right? So that's where I went, and that happens a lot of times to be the Lyme cases or pandas or neurological conditions or mold illness. And so I had to figure out what to do, right? You got those cases in front of you, and you've got to figure it out. Get more training, learn more, be around great other practitioners, and so that's what I did. Led me here.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious as to what was kind of your turning point in your own personal health. Like, was there somebody that you came across? Like, how did that spark get lit for you?
It was incremental to some degree. As a kid, my mom would mix homeopathy, chiropractic with Western medicine, right? She somehow made that whole work in her head. So I'd have a homeopath, and then I'd have a chiropractor, and then I'd have my pediatrician, right? Get my vaccines one day and antibiotics one day, get my adjustment the next, get some homeopathics the next. And so I had this weird mix coming into it. But as I got a little older into my teen years and I was working out with my dad and I was getting really into athletics, I could see that the efforts I put in made a difference, right?
Mm.
I sleep better, I eat a little better, I take some supplements, I work out, I felt better. And so I started reading more of my own. I started reading Andrew Weil, right? The big integrative guy from Arizona. I started reading him in college and started studying athletic training. But that pivotal point for me was really that teen years when at the time I was doing athletics and my dad was working out with me, and I was doing some protein and some little things like that. But I got Epstein-Barr virus. I got mono, and it
Mm.
totally took me out. And I was really stressed because I thought I was going to miss a lot of the track season. And I was just peaking in my sophomore year of high school, peaking into the varsity. And I was afraid I was going to lose my spot. if I couldn't keep up. And of course, I was down and out for mono. Everybody wanted me to stay home. So my dad started shoving me full of vitamin C and a multi and zinc. And I was like, hey, this helps. And then not only did I feel better from the Epstein-Barr virus, but I felt better than usual, right? Some of my obsessive thoughts went down, my inability to sleep, that sort of stuff. And so I could realize, hey, I can make a difference with this stuff in myself. I have the power inside me. It wasn't the doctor. Because for me, even as a kid, I'd recognize I'd go to the doctor, we tell him what was wrong. He might try a prescription or not. And it was hit or miss.
Mm.
If I had an infection, sometimes I felt better from my antibiotic, but hey, I got a tummy ache. And then as a kid, they put you on an antacid and like, oh, I feel worse. Like, and so it's like felt like I couldn't. And then they would try to stick me with a needle sometimes, which I absolutely hated.
Mm.
I think I actually got out of a couple rounds of vaccines because, especially as a pandas kids, I had a freak out in the doctor's
Oh,
office.
wow.
And so I would, nurse would show up the needle and I would lose it. And it was like nobody was going to hold me down. And so I think I got out of a couple of rounds of those because of freaking out. And so I felt like I couldn't trust him very much. And he's a very nice man. And I think he did the best he could, but it was like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you want to stick me with a needle. I don't like that. And so when getting into high school and then my dad teaching me a little bit more about supplementation, our diets were mostly atrocious,
Mm.
totally standard American diet. And I was so picky anyways. I was basically living on meat and junk food and soda and milk. And so I ate carrots as the only vegetable I ate. Sometimes I would eat fruit. And so, but he was knowledgeable in supplements. And so I was like, I can make this difference. I am empowered for me with this. I want to show other people this, right? At first, I thought that meant sports medicine, but God had a different plan. He really shifted my status when I entered chiropractic school from sports medicine to more of the holistic health approach.
Mm. Are there key pivotal trainings that you've taken that you feel have really helped you? So if like practitioners are listening to this and they want to, uh, you know, go in the path of working with more complex cases, where's a great starting point for them?
Yeah, I think any functional medicine background is going to be huge. I did IFM, but there's other great options. Your book, Perfect Practice, was a big one getting for me actually into building a functional medicine practice. And so, any background in functional medicine you can start to have, I think helps a ton. I also studied Chinese medicine, so I took a couple hundred courses in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I did biological medicine, which is more of like a Swiss European medical
Mm.
training, and that's integrates Chinese medicine with homeopathy, with kind of an eclectic functional medicine early background before functional medicine was really a thing. But I'd say if you wanted to start somewhere, start with functional medicine and then build. To me, the big thing though, if you want to deal with the more complex cases, can you form a systems thinking approach, right? So like if your mental operating model is in a systems approach, and one of the things I teach when I train doctors how to use the system we do is five element theory. And you think in five element theory of how the interactions are, and then not so much focus on like the wind or the dampness aspects, but the five elements and their organ associations, and then plug in your functional medicine understanding of the organs. And so you create this systems approach where they intertwine in the five elements, but the nitty gritty is functional medicine. And so you see those connections. And I did a lot of kinesiology training. I did applied kinesiology. I worked with a mentor of mine, Dr. Milton Dowdy, on complex chiro plus kinesiology, which is like a clinical kinesiology with hand modes and muscle testing.
Mm.
So I integrate that. So how I figure things out is with the muscle testing, but then my head knowledge is based around the five element theory and functional medicine.
Wow. So when a client comes to you, what would that process look like?
So a lot of times we'll do either an initial visit where it's a virtual. And if it's a virtual, they filled out some questionnaires and forms ahead of time. I can see their history, send me any labs that are 3 to 6 months old. We'll do a real detailed history. And in my head, I'll have a little piece of paper. I'm starting to kind of put together this systems map, right? I call a mind map. Okay, what's your main complaints? What body systems seem to be fitting into that? How are they related, right? So as I'm filling that out, if somebody comes in and they're dysautonomic, so they've got POTS, they can't stand up without their blood pressure tanking, they're a stress mess. Okay, I'm thinking, well, their fire's depleted. Okay. And so that in Chinese medicine would be like the heart, the small intestine, the adrenals, all of that's depleted. But what depletes that? What steals a lot of that fire? That could be metal. So that could be the gut, the large intestine, or the lungs. And so I'm saying, okay, what's the problem that's having to steal all this energy? So I say, okay, here's what I think's going on, and then I'll set up some tests. Let's do a stool test. Let's do maybe a hormone panel or urine hormone panel. So I'm basing that off those interconnections. And then from there, based on that, a lot of times we do an intensive model. Patients will come and stay with us at the clinic here for 1, 2, 3 weeks, and we'll do an all comprehensive approach. They'll see the doctor for up to 50 minutes a day. We're doing hands-on care, maybe some Chinese medicine, maybe emotional work, maybe adjustments, building a protocol, muscle testing in the office. They're doing detox therapy, saunas, neurofeedback, laser work, massage, that sort of thing throughout the day, building kind of a whole comprehensive approach. The key to me, though, initially is good history. It kind of comes from the homeopathic background. Homeopaths had to take incredible histories to figure out which remedy you needed. And so take a really detailed history and then start to fill out your mind map, right? So which systems are an issue? And then we're looking for the lowest common denominator among those systems, right? So for instance, when I was talking about that case, fire's depleted, and then the gut's an issue though. Maybe their guts, they've got a couple of gut symptoms, but it looks like maybe their gut system's stealing all the energy. Then we do some extra testing in that, functional medicine testing to see. And so we might say, okay, we can support your fire pathways, we can support your adrenals, but I'll have to support them forever if I don't figure out what that lowest common denominator is, which for this case might look like dysbiosis or leaky gut or parasites, whatever that is.
As you're sharing this, I'm like, man, I think anyone could benefit from this approach. Would you agree, or does somebody have to be in further down the road of degeneration or dysfunction to benefit from something like this? Because what you're describing is, I feel like, man, I should go spend a few weeks, Martin, and just get like a full workup. It almost sounds like a healing vacation.
For
Like,
sure.
how is the experience like for clients? I'd love to learn more about it.
Yeah, so we designed it for complex cases, right? It gets us, we found I've done a mix of virtual and office. I've done occasional in-person appointments. And for really complex cases, I found the intensive works well for a short duration to get a big bump. But we do have people come in who say, I just want to tune up. I just want a good workover. Like I feel pretty good, but you've helped my wife or you've helped my husband. And I just want to make sure I feel great. I want to get ahead of anything bad. So they come in and get a tune up, do 1 or 2 weeks. And the key is we didn't want the clinic to feel clinical, right? We don't want to feel cold. So it's a very big spa atmosphere. It smells great. All the furniture is comfy. There's furniture on the walls. Staff greets you with a smile, right? There's snacks. There's low mold coffee. There's teas. And so we've tried to design it around, yes, we want the best health benefit from a healthcare approach, but we want it to feel good. We want it to be relaxing, right? So it's hitting that right fight or flight. We want to get rid of that, leave that at home, focus on that parasympathetic setup. So we try not to rush you around from therapy to therapy. You've got an hour lunch, right, during the day that you can relax in. We've got a break room that you can go chill in or even watch a movie or just I've got tons of coloring books in there that we have the adults do or puzzles. So we want the whole thing to be a full experience, not a cold clinical setup. We don't want to send you to Mayo, right? They do great work, but that's not what we're wanting. We're wanting this to be a total quantum shift in what you're doing, right? You kind of talk about that logarithmic bump. We want it to be a whole order of magnitude different than what you're used to.
Yeah, I love the name too, Keystone Total Health, right? Uh, Keystone is as many people would know, kind of that pivotal stone in holding the bridge up. What would you say is the keystone to health, if you had to pick one?
Yeah, I think I usually break it down to four for people. I say these are the four things we're looking at to find your keystone that's holding either your health together or that's holding this chronic illness in place that we've got to deal with. I'll tell people toxicity is probably number one. I think you could break most things down to the fact that the environment's toxic, right? It gets more toxic each and every year. That's a biggie. And so, but I break it down to four people. I say either we're deficient in something, we're missing the good guys. And honestly, a lot of times it's not nutrients. It's the basics. We can't breathe well. We're not getting enough good clean air. We're not getting clean water, enough movement, love, touch, right? We're missing something. It's toxicity. We're taking in too much junk or in the environment, too much junk, whether that's heavy metals or plastics or mold. Digestion. If our gut's a wreck, everything else is going to be dysfunctional from our brain to our hormones to our immune system. And then lastly, stress and emotional health. That's a key one. I would say if every case had something in common, it would be that emotional piece, right? Getting the mindset correct, helping them clear out old emotional traumas, emotional wounds, limiting core beliefs. We spend a lot of time doing that work in the offices. It's doing neurofeedback that's geared around releasing some of that stuff. Because that's, to me, that's what holds a lot of people back. To
Mhm.
some degree, I always joke, if somebody just comes in with Lyme disease, they don't have anything else but Lyme disease, that's easy, right? That's a pretty strong. I'll see those people for 2 weeks and never hear from them again. 2 years down the road, I might get a card that says, "I've done great, thanks, doc." With straightforward Lyme disease. But the cases that get stuck, they've got some trapped emotion, they've got some trauma in the background that's limiting their immune system, that's keeping them stuck in the same loops. And so I say, if I had to pick one, physiologically, maybe toxicity everybody's dealing with, but those cases that are stuck, those complex ones, we've got to deal with that neuroemotional health.
Yeah, so, that's been coming up a lot more and more these days. I feel like it's finally getting the attention that it deserves. Um, when did you recognize that pattern? Because it probably came with clinical experience, right? To recognize, like, yeah, I'm giving this all my best clinical tools that I have, and something isn't clicking right. Was that early on in your career, or is that something that came a little bit later?
I knew it had to be a component because for me, with my background being obsessive compulsive, all the anxiety, all of that, I had to address that in my own case. And so it's something I wanted to address in people. But early on, I was just doing a little bit of neuroemotional technique, right? I would just mix it in here or there if it came up in the muscle testing. But as time went on, especially dealing with the more complex cases, it was like, oh my goodness, something that's almost every one of these cases needs in order to move forward or kind of complete their care is some form of brain retraining or emotional work to clear some of these. And so it went from like, oh, we just do it when it pops up to every case needs some component of this. We have 7 steps of recovery we do for mold illness cases, the sixth step for every case. And I kind of put this in there so that it's not like, hey, this is not your fault. This is not all in your head type of thing. Every case needs brain retraining. That's our sixth step. Every case needs a component of brain retraining to complete their healing pathway. And so it's become integral for us. It's been integral in my own personal healing.
Mm.
And the results, and you know this too, but the results are so much exponentially better with our clients and our patients if they're putting in the work on that neuroemotional side.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I, I'm so glad that this is getting the light of day and is coming to the forefront. And, you know, it's important for practitioners, even if they don't do this work, to find someone who they can refer to that does. And I'll do that all the time. So grateful that you're doing that. And I think you mentioned there's 7 steps, and you mentioned six was the brain retraining. Would you be kind enough to walk us through all seven?
For sure. Yeah. And while the steps come out linearly, right? One, two, three, the reality is that you're kind of using them interconnected. They overlap at times. And so someone early on, let's say, I might have to say, we got to do step 6 after step 1 to get you progressing, depending on what's going on. But step 1 for mold recovery for us is we got to find the mold and try to get you out of exposure. Okay.
Mm.
So we want to make sure that's your issue. And then wherever it's at, get you away from exposure as best as possible. Step 2 is we got to open up the drainage pathways. We got to get things moving out, binding it up. Early on, I don't go on a hard and heavy detox. Just get the drainage, get things moving and bind it up early on to lower that. Step 3 is lower inflammation. So in mold illness, one of the big things it creates is a chronic inflammatory cycle that happens partially because of the weird way that mold and mycotoxins, mold toxins affect your immune system. So they, on one end, they suppress it so that you can't quite clear it all the way. But because of that suppression, your innate immune system keeps making crazy amount of cytokines, immune stimulant, right, on that inflammatory. So you're never
Mm.
clearing it. You're just making more and more inflammation. So we've got to lower that inflammation. Okay, so that's step 3. Step 4 then is I'm going to directly address the immune system. Maybe you've got other lingering infections that are concurrent with the mold, whether that's Lyme, whether that's staph in the sinuses, maybe strep or gut infections, whatever that is, we're going to hit those at step 4 and start clearing that. And that might include some antifungal type protocols too for the mold. Step 5 is we're going to deal with whatever else happened. Okay, so now if your gut's a mess, if your hormones are dysregulated, if you got neurotransmitter imbalances, whatever that is, step 5 is where we're going to deal with that. Step six is brain retraining. And we mix and match a lot of options there. I'd love to hear what you like to refer to, but we'll use in the office some neuroemotional technique, internal family systems or parts work therapy. We'll do tapping and then the neurofeedback. And then we refer out to things like DNRS or primal trust or Gupta, all that sort of stuff. And then step seven, when somebody's worked those, is we'll work to rebuild a mold tolerance, right? Because a lot of people early on end up feeling like they have to just keep running from mold. We don't want you to have to do that the rest of your life where you're always looking over your shoulder for that next mold exposure. So we want to rebuild a mold tolerance.
That's awesome, man. It's I can see how comprehensive it is. And so over what period of time would you deliver a program like that? Is that something that's done in the intensive, or is it mapped out over several months?
Yeah, we touch base on at least the first 6 steps in the intensive. Right? I might not fully hit each step. I might focus on whatever is most needed, but each step is usually a little bit touched on. Rebuilding a mold tolerance is realistically not till 90 days down the road, just because if they're still too inflamed and you're trying to rebuild it's a tolerance and give them exposures, it's just going to create an up and down cycle. But 90 days later, you can start to work on that mold tolerance as long as they're following the other 6 steps. But overall, you can touch base on those in 1 to 2 weeks.
So what are, for step one is locating the mold and getting out of it. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit. Where are common places that, practitioners who are listening to this might want to instruct their clients to look for mold? What are potentially obvious places to look for it? And what can people do to mitigate it if moving out isn't an option?
Yeah.
Whether it's like, I'm curious, like I'm wondering about minor mold issues, if there is such a thing, like, some mold on the grout in their shower, ways to address, things like that. If their whole house is filled with mold, I totally understand they need to get out of it. But curious, where do people look, and what are some really simple things they can do if they have it?
So what we're looking at with mold is like any microbe. We want to look at the right environment. So we're looking at, does it have food and water for mold? So does it have something it can eat, whether that's human dust cells or drywall or whatever that is, paper, wood, and does it have enough moisture to do that? So anywhere there's water in the house is a potential source. So under sinks, on around the fridge, if it's got a water spigot, near the garden hose spigots coming out of the house, the bathtubs, the HVAC system, those are all big areas to go looking at. Okay, and anywhere those are components. And if you're going to go poking around to look, wear a mask. I usually have patients say wear an N95 mask or better if you're going to go poking around, especially if you're sensitive. So making sure you're protecting yourself a bit. Take a flashlight in there, poke around and see, is it damp? Is it humid? Okay, is there old water stains, water marks? Can you see fungal growth? Sometimes you see it. In a lot of cases, houses that are moldy, though, when we test, we don't actually see the growth right away. You have to go hunting for it, right? So we're looking in there. If you're going around some of the areas where water is at, but you can't see it, is the drywall moist, right? Is it softer than the other areas? Maybe it's not wet, but it's softer. And I'm prone, for me and my family, to say, okay, let me put up some plastic wrap on this door if that's soft. Let me put on a mask, a little suit from Lowe's, a little protective suit, and I'm going to cut that drywall out and see what's behind there. And just cut a little square, all right? And if there's moisture back there, if there's a little bit of mold growth, okay, now you know where it's at. So, but you can hunt. We sometimes give out a little hunting guide that gives some of the common areas, but I would look under any sinks, hot water heaters, anywhere there's moisture. And then you're also looking at humidity in the house. So you can do a humidity meter and see anywhere that's over 50%. But if you've got areas at over 60%, that's mold city. Okay, that's really an area that really is going to attract mold. So you want to go around and look and see. So here in Tennessee, it's really easy for a basement, for instance, to get up to 70 or 75% humidity. And then you mix that with maybe a little bit of dampness on top of it or not good circulation. So here's what's sad about modern housing, right? Better energy efficiency means that it's easier to heat and cool our homes, less bills, but that also makes it more prone for mold because it gets stagnant, it gets dark, damp, stagnant air. So that airflow gets stuck there and those mold spores just build up. And so a lot of times basements are big places because of that. They're darker, more damp, less airflow. And so we're looking at that humidity. A couple things to do for humidity, of course, you can get dehumidifiers. You can keep the house a little bit cooler, run at a little bit lower temperature. Nothing crazy, maybe 69 or 70 degrees. Keeping that airflow going, though, and that lower temperature helps to keep the humidity down, which is big.
Mm.
Now, if you have a minor issue, not major, if it's a major issue, you should call professionals, of course. But a minor issue, there's a couple of things. If it's like, let's say it's grout in the bathroom, okay, that you found and you've got some mold growth in there, mask up, and then you can use some different antifungal cleaners to clean it up. And if you're, I would recommend that you even toss whatever rag you use, toss it in the garbage when done outside, right? But there's different options you can use. There's a strong vinegar, like you can get a 20% vinegar to clean that out, or hydrogen peroxide, like a 12% hydrogen peroxide. Those are great options. We also use a company that has a citrus-based spray that's really great for mycotoxins. They make an enzymatic product and a probiotic product that we'll use. And we found that that really helps to lower mold scores like that when we clean those sort of areas. You can clean it up. If it's growing on something porous, whether that's wood or drywall or whatever, ideally you'd want to have that removed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so if you're going to have that removed, you want to create a protective barrier, put some 6 millimeter plastic up over that door, try to open up a window. You can rent an air scrubber really affordably, which has multiple HEPA filters, sucks all the air out of there. So it's constantly trapping those mold spores that are maybe getting released if you're going to cut it out. If you're handy, if you're sensitive, don't do this work yourself, right? But you want to remove it, put it in a trash bag, tie that bad boy up real tight, chuck it out the window or carry out the house real quick. Those are great, easy steps, ways to hunt it. We can talk about some testing options if you want. Really low key things though to keep your home mold free or treat low mold issues. You can do a really nice HEPA filters. There's HEPA filters that are pretty affordable up to really fancy ones. Put your research in. I don't know if you want me to mention companies on here, so I'll just say put your research in for HEPA.
Yeah,
Good HEPA
you
air
can mention
filters.
companies.
Yeah,
That's
we
something.
use Medify Air. They've been great. Air Doctor's been pretty good. Austin Air's been pretty good. Mix and match, and you got to keep on top of the companies too, as the companies change, or grow. Sometimes you got to make sure they're still doing what they're meant to do. But those really help to limit mold spores in the air. And then we'll do a lot of fogging with an ELV fogger, so it turns different fogging solutions. So we'll use EC3, makes a great citrus fogging solution that really helps to lower mycotoxins. So we'll once a week fog the house and clinic just to keep everything kosher.
Hmm.
Sometimes we'll mix in a probiotic mix to fog with it just to really lower any mold spores like that. And then we'll use PCO technology. That's an oxidation technology that creates a hydroxyl radical. You can kind of think of it like ozone, which oxidizes viruses, bacteria, mold, but this one you can breathe. So you can leave these running full time. We install them in all our HVAC systems for us personally. So we have them here at the clinic. We have them at our homes, at our home. And so it's always putting out this hydroxyl radical, which is really suppressing any mold growth. And we found even if somebody can't move out, let's say, and the mold problem is kind of moderate or bad, we'll have them get a couple of these hydroxyl reactors that produce these PCO technology out, and it will help make the situation manageable for them before they can remediate, because it's always lowering that load in the air. So those are really great options to keep the area either clean and mold free going forward, or deal with a minor or moderate issue is just that maintenance with the fogging, the PCO, the HEPA filters. Yeah.
Man, this is serious stuff.
It gets involved. Yeah.
Yeah, like this is so good because I don't think people take this serious enough, and I love how serious you take it. Uh, because you understand how significant it is on somebody's health. I would imagine that you get a lot of referrals to your practice just because your expertise, your bedside manner is fantastic. I can tell you really care. You've got a wonderful story. It sounds like I haven't been to your office, but I'm putting it on my bucket list to come there to visit and certainly see you. But I'm what I love about this is that you there's so much passion behind what you do, and what I'm curious about is how you market and promote your services, what you've done to grow your business and your practice. For people who are listening, I'd love to learn a little bit more about that part of your journey.
Yeah. So one thing early on we figured out is you have to create a niche, right? And so I've done Lyme, autoimmune, neurological disorders, all that, especially in the past in my career. But when we decided, hey, not a lot of people are doing mold well. I know mold really well. I dealt with it myself. I deal with it in cases. Let's hone in on that and building the practice the way we have now, honing in on that niche was the key for us. Because as we did social media, as we did some minor word of mouth marketing, that sort of thing, focusing on that niche allowed us to focus in on one thing. And so then I could talk to patients about that one thing, and people could refer to me about that one thing. So that one to say, to me, that's number one. Pick a niche. What market do you enjoy working with? Who do you enjoy working with as a person? Right. And hone in on that thing. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I don't think you don't have to, in my mind, you know, focus in on like, I only like dealing with these type of mold cases. Just pick something, mold, whatever it is, that sort of world. And then secondly, for me, while I enjoy talking to people and being with people, I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. And so I couldn't do the make 1,000 connections thing. It was exhausting to me. I can't do that. But what I found was if I could make key connections, right? Build really good relationships with key connections. And so as we built that niche, then I could go out and talk to people. So we started using, for instance, one company's mold testing plates and a couple of their mold products because they worked. And so we started using them, and then I formed a good connection with them in that. And so now they sponsor our weekly Instagram lives, and they have me on their Instagram page to do lives for them. And they focus on us as their key alternative medicine referral now, because I spent time building that network, right? Mm-hmm. And so as I've done that with key individuals and key companies, that's really helped to grow us to kind of continue to build that referral network. And it gives you a little bit more social credit, right, on the back end. People can see you on cross platforms, having blogs on other people's platforms. And so making those connections. And sometimes we had to grassroots that early on, right? Somebody had a podcast that had 100 followers. I'd do it, right? It's 100 people I haven't connected with. And so as a grassroots, say, okay, that's great. I'll have you on a live on my Facebook. Okay. And we would just grassroots it, and that would spread. And then somebody eventually would pick you up. Right. And so we were using a Rife machine occasionally, nothing crazy. I wasn't even advertising that I used it, but we did use it in the clinic. And somehow, because of a couple of small podcasts I did, the founder of one of the Rife companies got a hold of me and said, hey, I want you on the podcast. Okay. So that goes out to 5,000 people. Well, that got me, 20 calls the next week. And so forming those things, and for me, it is a little spiritual. And what I mean by that is like I trust in what's happening, and that serendipity and that synchronicity that happens as you're taking it one step at a time moving forward. And so early on, I can remember sitting down and I was getting ready to set up a marketing plan for one of our ventures. And I was like, okay, here's what I think I need to do. And I kind of put it on paper. I need to post this much on social media. I need to do X, Y, and Z Google ads, whatever. I said, okay, let me do a little meditation on it and just check in. Is this what I should do? No. That's the answer I kept getting. No. Okay. What do you want me to do? And it was focus on this one connection. Okay. Focus on networking with this one person, building this relationship. And it was kind of like almost arguing in this meditative stance. Are you sure? I'm a doer. I'm a goal. I'm an achiever, right? That's my personality style. Very, very driven. And I'm like, I got things to do. Give me a checklist, give me a plan, give me a 10-step thing, right? And I'm going to knock it out. And it was like, no, I don't want you to make this crazy marketing plan. I want you to focus on this setup, right? And so that one connection, though, got me the next connection, which then probably has brought me 200 contacts, 200 leads over the time that have all been mostly even fruitful. And so leaning into some of that and letting those synchronicities happen while putting in effort. And of course, the flip side is from my personality style and from running a business, do I still have systems in place for marketing? Yes, but I wasn't trying to get them all perfect, right? I wasn't trying to make them all. I was focusing on what was the next biggest thing I needed to do, just that next step that I felt intuitively called to do, and then simplify the rest. Instead of trying to follow all the best social media plans and email funnels and whatever, I said, okay, I just need to make this good enough while I focus on this. So instead of stressing on the decision we came to, instead of stressing on making this many reels and this many, and oh my goodness, I don't know if you do a big social media thing, it can take you 2 hours to make a really good 30-second reel. It was a
Yeah,
bad
it's
investment
work.
of my time. Yeah. And so for me personally, it was not where I needed to invest it. The return on and time investment was not great. And so we said, okay, what's the bare minimum we can put? We're going to do one weekly live on social media. Boom, that's it. And so as we've grown and I could hire a marketing person, they can handle that. They can make all the systems. That's their job. But initially, when I was building that, I need to sit down, get in touch. And for me, it was what's my niche and who can I network and make connections with?
Amazing. Was that connection that you made, you don't have to name names, but was that connection you made in the health industry or in a totally different industry?
Yeah, well, they're in the health industry, but they're mostly in the their biggest niche, I would say, their biggest moneymaker is keeping your house clean with mold stuff. So
Mm,
they sell mold candles, they sell foggers and some of that sort of stuff. When we were using some of their equipment, they sell some mold testing stuff. So we were already using some of their stuff, but because of the making that connection with them and working with them so much and spending a little more time talking with them than maybe we needed. Hey, how's your day? Right? When we're on the phone ordering things, getting to know, because some of these companies don't have tons of employees. They've got 5 or 10. And
hmm.
so likely you're getting the same 3 people all the time. And so, hey, I kind of like this Dr. Hart guy, or I kind of like my wife as our kind of clinic director doing a lot of our business side. Hey, I kind of like chatting with her. And it was building those connections and being nice to them that then they said, hey, we have this opportunity. Would you like to do it?
Mm, that's awesome. Yeah, just be a nice person. How simple, right? And what I love is the listen to your intuition part. I'm curious because we do talk about personal development a lot. Is what is your meditation practice? Because that can mean different things to different people. I'm curious, is there a specific technique that you use or a practice that you have?
Yeah, my day-to-day meditation is kind of like a body mindfulness, just really getting grounded into my body, feeling it, paying attention to it, and just trying to stay total body present to that inner feeling, that interoception.
Hmm.
And so feeling my whole body at once. And then as thoughts come up, as whatever physical sensations come up, I'll just really gently kind of repeat a mantra. So it's kind of probably some variation of contemplative prayer mixed with transcendental. So for me, I'll use let go. And so just I get stuck in a story, reground in my body and let go. And I'll just repeat that a few times. And as I ease back, let's go back into that mindfulness. At times, if I'm doing something specific, like a little bit more of like an intuitive knowing, I'll do almost like I'll get into that meditative state. I'll just do a little thankfulness prayer, a little gratitude prayer, and then kind of ask my question and then see what comes up out from within me. Right. So when I was doing that marketing thing, did a little bit of that mindfulness, got really grounded, and it's like, okay, what do you want me to do with this marketing plan? And just wait to see what comes up. And I'll usually write that down, whatever that feeling or that maybe a couple of words is, write that down. And at times I've done a little bit of vision questing within that, that same idea of get meditative. And then for me, usually it involves mentally hopping on an eagle and then putting a couple of the intention out there of what I'm considering or what I'm thinking about and then seeing where the eagle takes me. I did that one time. I had an opportunity. I was running a big Lyme clinic in Kansas. I was the head of 4 or 5 doctors, and we mostly did Lyme, big setup. I had opportunity. One of my patients, he's an investor, offered to help me build out a clinic in Portland. I also had the opportunity to come open a clinic here in Tennessee or move my family and who knows what to Arkansas. We had some property down there, maybe open a clinic, whatever. I was really torn. And I was getting pretty far in this planning process on the clinic in Portland. And I was kind of like, hey, I got to pull the trigger soon. This really means I'm probably going to make actually less money for 10 years with a lot more work because it's going
Mm.
to be a huge multi-million-dollar investment. And then I wasn't sure what to do. So sat on the bird, took me there, said, okay, what are we doing? I could not get that bird to fly to Portland. It would not fly. It would take me to Arkansas, but it didn't want to go. And it told me to wait. It just went circles around Kansas, right? That's what happened this visualization meditation. And
Wow.
so at that time, I didn't know about Tennessee yet as an option. And so I waited. We waited in Kansas, um, nixed the Portland thing, parted ways on positive terms, nixed the Portland thing, and Tennessee opened up. The opportunity for Tennessee opened up, and that's where we went. And
Hmm.
that's in my mind, that's why I was supposed to wait. So,
Wow, powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. How long have you been meditating for?
oh, 10 years off and on, probably really consistently the last 5 to 7.
Hmm. What do you think is the trend of healthcare? What direction do you see it going in?
I mean, overall, whatever can be empowered for our own health, right? I think that's big. People are wanting more and more empowerment themselves. And so leaning into that more alternative functional space, because that is really personally empowering. It takes the power out of the doctor's hands as an authority and makes him a team member. And so, in general, that's the space we're going to be heading. I truly do believe the mind body setup, though, the neuroemotional healing is going to take a huge jump coming forward.
Hmm.
It's going to take a huge jump, even coming off of COVID, where what we're seeing is major neurological changes with people. They've run enough studies now where people are having personality changes after they have COVID. They're more neurotic, they're less agreeable, they're less open. Well, what we need a lot of times is a neuroemotional shift for those folks. There's good functional medicine reasons for that, but we've seen changes with just doing the neuroemotional work. And for people, if they truly want to take control of their health themselves, they want to be personally empowered, it's that ability to really change your state in the moment with that neuroemotional healing. So I think that's where it's going to head.
I love that. And it's amazing what you've built and what you've created. Any plans to expand or franchise what you're doing?
Yeah, our goal would be to expand the clinic. We'd like to bring on 1 or 2 more doctors as we go. We've got some associates here and staff and such. So we'd like to broaden that. And then the goal would be also more workshops for me to train physicians or doctors or healthcare practitioners in our methods. We call it the keystone process, right? That's 7 steps for mold, but there's a whole systems thinking process that I teach the doctors to use. And as my time as a clinician, I've taught other doctors to use as far as that systems thinking. And so I would like to expand into a more consistent workshop format for other clinicians.
Is that something that you train in person? Is it online?
It would be ability to do both, probably with some kind of weekend lives, come down, do a live for a couple of days, and then follow ups virtually to enhance the training.
Yeah, that's awesome. So is that something that you have upcoming admissions for? Is that rolling admissions? How often are you enrolling into the classes?
So right now we're taking names and numbers for the full class. I'll do some personal consultations with practitioners where we'll do some one-on-one coaching with them, and I'll help them review cases from my format to get that
Mhm.
going, and so they can see that process. Formal training for the lives, I haven't launched yet, so I'm taking names at this point, building the list.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely make sure people can get in touch with you to get on that list. Sounds amazing. I love learning new clinical models, and I love the way your brain works and how you put this together into a process. So definitely, when it comes out or when you set a date, let us know. We can certainly put a message out to our list to let them know as well.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. So what's exciting for you? What are you most excited about in terms of your practice over these next coming 90 days?
Yeah, I would say we're really stable in general as the practice goes right now. And so I've got the opportunity to do some back end building. And so a couple of the key things I want to do a better job of back end building is for like my mold cases, for instance. So, okay, you come in, we figure out, yep, mold is your issue. And so I can backfill in some education for those patients. That way, for us as practitioners and my staff, we're not answering 1,000 of the same questions. And yes, we have some white papers and some things we can send them, but I want to make it more comprehensive. Okay, you got this. Here's your 5-week email course you get. Here's how to clean things. Here's how you need to be careful. Here's the realities of the situation. And so I want to build that as a more systematic format for a couple of big issues, mainly mold illness, our PANS pandas cases. So they've got the back end education they need. And then our care, right, can continue to be a totality, keystone total health, a comprehensive approach. I want that to continue to be a comprehensive place for them that they can feel that they've been taken care of, their questions are answered, they've got the knowledge they need to heal and succeed.
That's amazing. This past weekend, I was with my friend Joe Polish and Jeffrey Bland, and we're sitting on a boat with Jeff, and Joe and I have both cloned ourselves. So
Yeah,
we've created digital clones, and then we showed Jeff how to do it. And so he's going to be cloning himself.
love
And
that.
and so we'll get like access to his brilliance at the directly from our phones. I'm thinking that you should probably look into this process because, uh, it's one thing to disseminate the information. It's another thing for people to have it at their fingertips and still be able to feel like they're able to ask the question
Yeah.
and then get a response. So we use a service called Delphi.ai. And if you've got video content, written content, audio content,
Yeah.
PDFs, you can literally in less than an hour just upload all of it. Any podcast you've been on, yeah, it'll upload for you. YouTube channel, if you've got one, it'll upload all the entire channel for you.
Wow.
Podcasts, if you've got a podcast or if you've been on podcasts, you just type in the episodes or type in the name of your podcast and it'll rip every episode. And it does it, you just have to feed it the links and it does the rest.
Yeah.
And then it learns, so then it's able to answer questions. And then you could start feeding questions into it. And if you don't like the responses or you want to tweak them a little bit, you can make that one-time tweak and then it'll upgrade its knowledge. And
Oh
then,
my goodness, I'm gonna have to deep dive into that this weekend.
yeah, dude, it would be perfect because then this would be great for your practitioners when they have a question,
Yeah.
and it'll be great for your clients when they have a question because you're essentially just uploading your brain and then because you're able to tweak it and modify it and edit it, it gets better with time. So you can actually, one other thing that you can do is you can, like, if you already know what the most common questions are that people are going to ask, you could just record like an audio Q&A giving your best response to that question and then upload that as an audio file and it'll read it instantly and then be prepared to provide that response.
That's incredible.
So that might be a good solution for you. And
Yeah, I'm gonna deep dive in that. I really appreciate that.
yeah, happy to share. I'll send you a text with the information because it was like Jeff's mind was just completely blown, and when I did mine, my mind was completely blown too. And
Yeah.
in the last, I spent like literally less than 2 days with it, and I uploaded 4 million words of text, and you ask it questions, and it's amazing, and it's got content clinically and business growth content. So whether clinicians are asking questions or patients or clients are asking questions, it's got all that information in there. So I'll touch base with you on that because I think it would be a really cool thing for you to do.
I'm stoked to dive into that.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for sharing your heart with the world and for the work that you do and clearly the passion that you have. I love that you're training practitioners as well because I think it's important to spread this message far and wide and I love the comprehensiveness of your approach. So excited for your future trainings that you'll be offering. We'll be sure to put that information into the show notes. And is there anything that you'd like to say in closing before we jump off here?
Follow your heart, right? Follow your passions, of course, in what you're doing, but find good mentors. Early on, reading Sachin's books, getting connected with him a bit, finding other mentors, that was a big key for me, making connections, network out there. You're the average of the 5 people you're around. Make those people really good people, both in heart and mind, in business, and in what you're trying to do, and you'll be successful.
Love it. Great, sage, timeless advice. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate your time today. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.